I really tried my best. Please watch the video until the end.
I stood on the cold marble floor of the Grand Awakening Hall. The heavy air pressed against my skin with an oppressive weight. This new reality felt like a poorly constructed simulation. Hundreds of young students waited for their magical evaluation. The massive crystal pulsed with a blinding white illumination. I calculated the exact distance to the central testing stage. A tall instructor called my new name with a booming, loud voice. The stone steps felt rough under my cheap leather boots today. Everyone expected me to awaken a basic elemental combat skill. I placed my right hand on the freezing surface of the crystal. A sudden surge of kinetic energy shot straight up my right arm. System alert. The awakening process has started for this user. A dull gray light emerged from the center of the giant stone. The crowd released a collective sound of utter disappointment. They saw a weak glow and immediately categorized me as trash. System alert. You have acquired the blueprint copy ability now. The instructor recorded my result with a highly dismissive wave. I stepped down from the platform without showing any emotion. My mind rapidly processed the hidden information on the screen. This world valued flashy destruction over actual tactical depth. A wealthy noble boy blocked my path with an arrogant stance. Sparks of raw electricity danced across his expensive coat. He mocked my gray light and called me a completely useless zero. I maintained my neutral expression and analyzed his body posture. The surrounding students gathered closer to watch the conflict. They wanted to see the strong crush the weak in public today. I silently activated my new skill to test its basic parameters. System alert skill scan initiated on the target directly ahead. A complex geometric pattern materialized in my field of vision. Glowing blue lines formed a detailed schematic of his ability. I read the energy source and the specific activation speed data. The noble possessed a high-rank lightning spear combat technique. His physical stance revealed a massive flaw in his defense grid. He reached out and forcefully grabbed my left shoulder right now. The physical contact sent a sharp static shock through my jacket. System alert contact established with the current target now. The system downloaded the structure of his lightning magic. I felt the raw data merging directly into my neural pathways. He charged his right hand with a deadly amount of power now. The air temperature increased rapidly due to the thermal output. Everyone in the hall expected me to suffer a devastating defeat. I did not attempt to dodge or block his incoming physical strike. My right hand moved upward with absolute mechanical precision. I caught his glowing fist right before it could hit my face. The kinetic force of his attack dissipated into the empty air. I commanded the system to refine the stolen energy structure. System alert. Refining the copied blueprint into a better form. The chaotic yellow lightning shattered into tiny floating pixels. I compressed the scattered particles into a dense plasma state. A blinding beam of pure white energy erupted from my open palm. The sudden flash of light blinded the entire audience there. The noble boy collapsed backward and hit the solid stone ground. His expensive clothes smoked from the intense thermal radiation. Absolute silence filled the massive room within a single second. The guild masters stared at my glowing hand with obvious terror. They realized the fundamental rules of power had changed now. System alert. The lightning spear upgraded into Imperial Thunder. I lowered my arm and let the plasma dissipate into the air. The transparent blueprint vanished from my field of view now. This ability did not just mimic the attacks of other weak people. I possessed the ultimate tool to dismantle this corrupt society. The registry classified me as completely unranked and worthless. They failed to understand the true nature of my unique existence. I would steal every valuable ability in this entire empire. My physical body felt perfectly fine after channeling the plasma. The fallen noble struggled to breathe on the cold marble floor. I stepped over his trembling form without a single ounce of pity. The path to absolute supremacy required a highly calculated plan. I needed to find more targets with exceptional combat potentials. Every handshake and staged fight would bring me more power. The system silently processed the background data of the room. System alert. 42 potential skills detected in this zone. I scanned the terrified faces of the remaining wealthy students. They looked like walking treasure chests waiting to be unlocked. My artificial empire started its construction on this exact day. The grand doors of the awakening hall remained locked shut. I walked toward the exit with slow and highly deliberate steps. The heavy boots echoed loudly against the ancient stone pillars. Several Imperial guards gripped their weapons with nervous hands. They lacked the courage to confront an unknown anomaly like me. The heavy wooden doors slammed shut behind my back today. I stepped into the cold afternoon air of the capital city. The official registry clerks avoided my direct line of sight. They quickly stamped my documents with a black unranked seal. My new status stripped away all basic privileges and rights. The Empire banished me to the lowest district of the capital. I accepted the metal identification tag without any complaints. This absolute rejection played perfectly into my long-term plan. The wealthy elites wanted me out of their clean, shining streets. They handed me the perfect isolated environment for my growth. I walked for 3 hours toward the abandoned outer perimeter. The smooth paved roads turned into broken cobblestone paths. Thick gray smoke blocked the natural sunlight from the sky. The temperature dropped significantly in this forgotten zone. Crumbling brick buildings leaned against each other in decay. The heavy scent of rust and damp soil filled my lungs quickly. People hid behind broken wooden shutters as I walked past them. They recognized the fresh, clean clothes of a recent academy exile. I needed to establish a secure operational base in this sector. 4 large men stepped out from a narrow, dark alleyway ahead. Their heavy boots splashed loudly in the muddy street puddles. The largest man carried a thick iron pipe in his right hand. He wore a torn leather vest covered in old metallic grease. This local gang leader saw me as an easy target for extortion. He stepped directly into my path and blocked the main street. I calculated the kinetic force required to break his posture. The man slammed his dirty hand onto my left shoulder roughly. System alert contact established with a hostile local target. A complex blue diagram materialized in my peripheral vision. Glowing lines traced the energy pathways inside his huge body. System alert skill scan complete for the current hostile entity. The text revealed a low-rank skill called will pressure. This basic power allowed him to project an intimidating aura. It forced weaker opponents to freeze in absolute pure terror. The gang leader activated his pathetic skill right in my face. A wave of invisible heavy air pushed against my physical body. The pressure felt like a slight breeze against a solid stone wall. I did not flinch or step back from his aggressive physical stance. The large man grunted and increased the energy output slightly. He expected me to drop to my knees and beg for my pathetic life. I stared directly into his dark eyes with absolute zero emotion. System alert. Copying the current skill structure into memory. The raw data flowed through my neural network in a split second. I analyzed the inefficient energy distribution of his technique. The blueprint showed massive flaws in his mental focus points. I commanded the system to rebuild the entire foundation now. System alert. Refining the copied blueprint into a superior form. The scattered blue lines merged into a dense geometric circle. System alert will pressure upgraded into absolute command aura. I released the newly constructed energy wave from my core. The ambient air temperature plummeted by several degrees instantly. A massive kinetic shockwave blasted outward in all directions. The invisible force slammed into the 4 gang members hard. The heavy iron pipe flew out of his dirty hand immediately. All 4 men collapsed onto the muddy ground simultaneously. The sheer weight of my aura crushed their physical resistance. They gasped for air under the invisible kinetic suppression field. The muddy water soaked into their cheap, ragged street clothes. I deactivated the skill and let the heavy pressure fade away. The gang leader stared up at me with a rapidly beating heart. He crawled backward until his back hit a solid brick wall. This brief encounter proved the ultimate superiority of my system. I did not need to train for decades to master a single ability. I could steal their lifetime of work in a single brief moment. The defeated thugs scrambled to their feet and ran away fast. I watched them disappear into the thick gray smog of the slums. This forgotten district offered a massive supply of raw materials. Every desperate criminal and exiled fighter possessed a skill. I needed to collect specific abilities with high strategic value. Flashy destructive magic held very little interest for me now. I wanted perception, defense, healing, and speed enhancements. A single strong attack could win a minor street fight easily. 10 perfectly connected skills could conquer an entire kingdom. I continued my patrol through the dark, winding alleyways alone. The floating blue blueprints illuminated the path ahead of me. My mind categorized the potential targets hiding in the shadows. The system scanned the environment with absolute silent precision. System alert. Multiple weak energy signatures detected nearby. I ignored the basic physical enhancement skills of the beggars. They lacked the structure required for my grand master design. A sudden loud crash echoed from an abandoned warehouse building. I shifted my direction and approached the damaged metal door. The heavy steel hinges groaned as I pushed the barrier open. A young man lay on the dusty concrete floor in obvious pain. Green energy flickered weakly around his badly injured hands. Several armed mercenaries surrounded him with drawn steel swords. I recognized the green glow as a specialized medical ability. The Empire controlled all people with medical healing traits. This boy clearly operated outside the official guild system. The lead mercenary raised his heavy blade for a fatal strike. I stepped into the dimly lit warehouse with calm, steady steps. My heavy boots announced my presence to the hostile group there. The mercenaries turned their attention toward the new intruder. I activated my newly acquired command aura without any hesitation. The invisible wave of kinetic force slammed into their bodies. The sudden pressure forced the armed men down to their knees. Their sharp steel swords clattered loudly against the stone floor. I walked past the paralyzed attackers without looking at them. The injured healer watched me approach with visible deep fear. I knelt down and placed my bare hand on his trembling shoulder. System alert contact established with an unregistered healer. The complex blueprint of his medical magic filled my vision. It possessed a highly efficient cellular regeneration matrix. System alert skill scan complete for the target medical ability. I copied the fundamental structure into my growing database. Instead of leaving him to die, I offered him a simple choice. I promised him absolute protection from the corrupt imperial laws. He swore his permanent loyalty to my cause in that exact moment. This disgraced healer became the first true citizen of my empire. I did not want to just steal every single ability in the world. I needed loyal subjects to hold the fragments of my grand power. We cleared the abandoned warehouse and established a secure base. The surrounding slums provided a perfect camouflage for my work. I spent the next 3 weeks hunting down useful criminal targets. Every staged fight in the dark alleys gave me another blueprint. I absorbed minor speed boosts and basic physical armor skills. The system silently refined every single stolen piece of data. My personal combat parameters increased with every nightly patrol. The local gangs quickly learned to fear the silent, unranked boy. I cleaned the streets and protected the poor local merchants. The forgotten people started following my strict daily rules. My absolute authority replaced the chaotic violence of the thugs. System alert. Sufficient data gathered for the next evolution. A massive golden notification window appeared in the empty air. System alert. The Hidden Empire Blueprint function is now active. I read the detailed description of my newly unlocked capability. I could now assign skill fragments to my loyal followers today. This revelation completely changed the scale of my future plans. I could manufacture an entire army of specialized elite soldiers. Ordinary people would become the foundation of my new kingdom. I called my loyal healer into the center of the dark warehouse. He stood before me with absolute trust in his tired green eyes. I selected a refined defensive barrier fragment from my database. System alert. Transferring the barrier fragment to the subject. A glowing blue geometric rune materialized on his right hand. The healer gasped as the new artificial energy entered his core. He raised his arm and summoned a perfect transparent shield. He stared at the glowing blue shield with absolute pure shock. The Imperial Registry claimed that power was a sacred birthright. I just proved that true power was simply a manufactured resource. The glowing blue shield pulsed with a steady rhythmic frequency. My loyal healer dropped to his knees in absolute disbelief. This simple transfer of data shattered his entire worldview. I needed more test subjects to expand my experimental army. We recruited 50 desperate workers from the lower slums. They possessed zero natural magical talent in their bodies. I lined them up against the cold brick wall of the warehouse. The system extracted minor fragments from my vast database. System alert distributing combat fragments to 50 subjects. Glowing blue geometric runes burned into their right hands. The sudden influx of raw energy forced them to the ground. They gasped for air as the artificial power altered their DNA. The dark warehouse filled with the bright light of the system. I assigned speed enhancements to the younger, agile recruits. The older veterans received dense physical armor upgrades. My loyal healer monitored their rapidly changing vital signs. Their weak physical bodies adapted to the new energy sources. This newly forged unit became my personal blueprint guard. They moved with absolute mechanical precision and deep loyalty. Our territory expanded rapidly across the Forgotten District. We eradicated 3 major criminal syndicates in 4 days. The local gang members surrendered without a single fight. The stolen wealth funded our massive structural renovations. Clean water and basic medical supplies flooded the dark streets. The starving citizens pledged their absolute lives to my cause. My artificial kingdom operated with perfect brutal efficiency. We established strict patrol routes along the outer borders. No unregistered criminals dared to enter my protected domain. The official Imperial Registry finally noticed our rapid growth. They could not ignore a wealthy, organized slum any longer. A high-ranking inspector arrived at our border the next morning. He wore a pristine white uniform with heavy gold decorations. The man possessed a rare detection skill of the highest tier. He scanned my perimeter guards with his glowing silver eyes. The inspector froze completely in his tracks near the gates. His advanced optical magic detected the artificial runes. He saw 50 men wielding powers they were never born with. This impossible reality broke his fundamental understanding. The Empire built its entire foundation on natural birthrights. My existence threatened to collapse their precious hierarchy. He turned around and fled back to the wealthy inner city fast. I watched his retreating figure without making a single move. The capital would send a massive punishment army very soon. We had exactly 48 hours to prepare for absolute war. I gathered my entire guard force in the central muddy plaza. The cold wind carried the heavy scent of incoming destruction. I activated the master control node within my neural network. System alert. Establishing a tactical link between all units. Invisible energy threads connected every single soldier to me. Their individual skill fragments merged into a massive grid. I could monitor their physical conditions and energy levels. The battlefield transformed into a giant living schematic now. Floating blue diagrams hovered above every single loyal guard. I adjusted their internal energy flows with a simple thought. The men stood in perfect formation without showing any fear. Heavy war drums echoed from the northern paved access road. 300 elite Imperial Knights marched into our slums. Their silver armor reflected the dull gray light of the sky. The lead commander raised his flaming sword high in the air. He ordered his troops to slaughter every single person here. I transmitted a silent attack command through the system link. My speed units vanished from their positions in a split second. They flanked the heavy knights with terrifying kinetic velocity. The Imperial soldiers failed to track their rapid movements. My heavy armor units stepped forward to absorb the magic attacks. Their connected barrier fragments formed a solid energy wall. The incoming fireballs shattered against our absolute defense. I observed the chaotic skirmish from a high rooftop position. The Imperial Knights fought as separate individual warriors. My artificial army operated as a single unified living weapon. We systematically dismantled their entire frontline formation. The enemy commander charged directly at my defensive line now. His flaming blade carried the destructive force of a meteor. I dropped down from the roof and landed right in his path. The stone ground cracked under the sheer weight of my impact. He swung his heavy weapon toward my unprotected physical neck. I raised my left hand and activated the absolute command aura. A massive kinetic shockwave blasted his flaming sword away. The sudden pressure crushed his expensive silver armor plates. He coughed heavily from the intense, sudden physical pressure. System alert target neutralized and massive threat eliminated. The remaining Imperial soldiers dropped their weapons in fear. They surrendered to the unranked boy from the Forgotten Slums. The absolute silence of victory settled over the bloody street. My loyal subjects cheered loudly for their newly forged empire. A blinding golden light filled my entire field of vision now. System alert. Calculating the final results of the current war. System alert title acquired founder of the artificial empire. System alert total authority unlocked for skill distribution. System alert. Main objective updated. Replace the registry now. I looked at the terrified faces of the captured noble knights. They finally realized the true horror of my unique existence. I was not born to simply survive in their corrupt hierarchy. I was born to completely destroy their sacred monopoly on power. My artificial kingdom would soon consume the entire continent. The real war for absolute supremacy had only just begun today. The captured noble knights knelt in the cold, muddy street. I walked slowly past their broken silver armor plates. The heavy metallic scent of ozone lingered in the damp air. Their elite status meant absolutely nothing in my territory. I stopped directly in front of the defeated unit commander. He stared at the dark ground with pure absolute defeat. I placed my right hand firmly on his heavy armored shoulder. System alert contact established with a high-ranked target. A massive, complex blueprint materialized in my direct vision. Glowing golden lines traced his powerful offensive ability. System alert skill scan complete for the noble commander. The data revealed a rare combat skill called Aura Blade. This technique converted raw physical stamina into sharp heat. The Imperial Registry classified this power as a sacred gift. I commanded the system to absorb the entire foundation now. The raw energy pathways flooded my personal neural network. I analyzed the massive inefficiencies in his energy output. The noble wasted too much power on useless, flashy visuals. System alert. Refining the copied blueprint into a new form, the scattered golden lines merged into a tight, dense blade. System alert Aura Blade upgraded into Imperial Plasma Edge. I stepped back and summoned the newly constructed weapon. A brilliant, white-hot blade of pure plasma formed instantly. The ambient air temperature spiked violently around my body. The defeated commander raised his head in absolute pure shock. He recognized the fundamental structure of his own birthright. His mind completely failed to process this impossible reality. I deactivated the plasma weapon with a single simple thought. The intense white heat vanished into the cold evening wind. We dragged the captured soldiers into the dark warehouse base. My loyal guards stripped them of their expensive silver gear. I needed to extract every single useful skill from this unit. The system worked continuously through the long, dark night. I absorbed advanced perception skills and heavy kinetic shields. My database expanded with high-tier military-grade abilities. The royal capital would definitely send a much larger force. I needed to evolve my current army beyond their basic limits. The system allowed me to fuse different abilities together now. I opened the master control interface in my active mind. Floating blue windows displayed my entire collected arsenal. I selected the new plasma edge and a dense kinetic barrier. System alert. Initiating the fusion of two high-tier skills. The two complex geometric diagrams overlapped in the empty air. Golden and blue lines twisted together into a perfect circle. The raw artificial energy stabilized into a brand new format. System alert fusion complete and new blueprint constructed. System alert. New skill acquired. Absolute retaliation armor. This new power absorbed physical damage and released pure heat. I called my 50 loyal guards into the central training area. They stood in perfect formation under the dim yellow lights. I distributed the new fused fragments to their physical cores. Glowing blue runes burned brightly on their heavy chest plates. The immense power surge forced them to grit their teeth hard. Their muscle density increased to handle the new energy output. My blueprint guard transformed into an elite heavy vanguard. The abandoned slum district became an impenetrable stone fortress. The local citizens worked tirelessly to support my grand vision. They finally had a strong leader who actually protected them. The Imperial Registry sent a formal declaration of absolute war. A heavy black crow dropped the official parchment at my feet. I read the golden, elegant letters with absolute zero emotion. The Royal Council branded me as a dangerous supreme heretic. They promised to burn the entire district to the bare ground. An execution force of 5,000 men marched toward us now. This massive army included 3 supreme-rank guild masters. The Empire wanted to crush my artificial kingdom immediately. I crushed the royal parchment in my right hand without a word. The fragile, dry parchment turned into fine white dust instantly. I walked up the tall stone stairs to the main defensive wall. My elite vanguard stood ready behind the heavy steel gates. The dark horizon filled with the bright torches of the enemy. The ground shook violently under their massive heavy march. I activated the tactical link and connected my entire army. Floating blue diagrams hovered above every single loyal soldier. Their individual energy signatures merged into a giant network. I felt the collective kinetic power of my artificial empire. The lead guild master stepped forward from the enemy ranks. He possessed a very rare and powerful gravity manipulation skill. The immense pressure of his aura cracked the paved stone road. He demanded our immediate unconditional surrender right now. I looked down at the arrogant fool from my high stone wall. He truly believed his natural talent made him a supreme god. I raised my right hand and synchronized my elite vanguard. System alert. Activating the absolute retaliation armor now. 50 bright white plasma shields ignited at the same time. The intense heat wave pushed the cold night air away rapidly. The enemy army took a collective step backward in pure fear. They stared at the impossible display of artificial raw power. I did not wait for the arrogant guildmaster to make a move. I transmitted the attack command directly into their minds. My heavy soldiers jumped over the wall with terrifying speed. Their enhanced physical mass slammed into the enemy front line. The kinetic impact shattered their front defensive formations. The true slaughter of the corrupt royal forces finally began. The massive kinetic shockwave threw hundreds of soldiers backward. Their heavy iron armor cracked under the intense absolute pressure. They finally understood the true terror of my artificial army. My vanguard pushed forward like a relentless machine of pure heat. The enemy ranks broke apart in absolute panic and total confusion. Numbers meant nothing against a perfectly linked combat system. The arrogant gravity guild master raised his hands toward the sky. A localized field of extreme pressure crashed down on my vanguard. He intended to flatten my elite troops into the cold, hard ground. The white plasma shields flickered under the massive heavy weight. My soldiers dropped to one knee to stabilize their core energy. This supreme ability possessed a terrifying raw physical output. I leaped from the stone wall and landed inside his active zone. The sudden artificial gravity multiplied my physical body weight. The intense pressure tried to crush my internal organs completely. I activated my kinetic barrier to block the heavy crushing force. The invisible heavy weight shattered the stone pavement around me. I needed one single moment of physical contact to end this war. I pushed through the dense gravity field with pure brute strength. The guildmaster stepped back with a look of absolute pure horror. He never expected an unranked boy to survive his ultimate attack. I grabbed his expensive silk collar with my left armored hand. The kinetic impact of my grip knocked the breath from his lungs. His physical body was incredibly fragile without his magic shield. System alert contact established with a supreme rank target now. A massive dark purple blueprint materialized in my direct vision. This complex structure held the absolute secret to gravity control. System alert skill scan, complete for the Supreme Gravity Master. The raw data flooded my network with heavy spatial math equations. His natural talent wasted energy on random wide area destruction. I commanded the system to extract the core foundation immediately. The purple lines detached from him and entered my vast database. I felt the fundamental laws of physics bend to my absolute will. System alert, refining the copied blueprint into a focused format. The messy spatial distortion collapsed into a perfect, dense point. System alert gravity control upgraded into absolute spatial lock. I released his collar and let him drop to the broken stone ground. The arrogant man gasped for air as his own natural power vanished. He became nothing more than an ordinary citizen of my new empire. The two remaining guild masters charged at me with flaming weapons. Their combined heat signatures raised the ambient air temperature. They wanted to avenge their fallen comrade before I could react. I raised my right hand and activated the new absolute spatial lock. A localized gravity field crushed them directly against the earth. Their flaming weapons shattered under the immense invisible weight. The remaining royal soldiers witnessed the absolute total defeat. They dropped their iron weapons and fell to their tired, weak knees. The execution force surrendered without further physical resistance. I deactivated the lock to let the cold wind clear the heavy dust. The battlefield remained totally silent under the dark night sky. My artificial kingdom had successfully defended its outer borders. My loyal guards quickly secured the thousands of defeated troops. They confiscated their magical weapons and heavy defensive armor. This influx of resources would accelerate my grand expansion plans. I walked through the broken ranks of the defeated royal army fast. The terrified men refused to make any direct eye contact with me. They realized that natural birthrights meant nothing in my domain. System alert. Calculating the energy harvest from the recent battle, thousands of minor skill fragments flooded into my central network. I possessed enough raw data to upgrade my entire loyal population. I opened the Empire management screen in my active conscious mind. A vast holographic map of the capital city projected into the air. The wealthy inner districts glowed with bright golden energy spots. System alert territory expansion requirements have been fully met. The borders of my artificial kingdom shifted forward on the map. We were no longer a small rebellion in the forgotten dark slums. I selected the captured soldiers and scanned their internal cores. Most of them possessed basic physical enhancements and minor auras. I could strip their abilities and distribute them to my own people. I approached the defeated Gravity Master still lying on the ground. He looked at me with eyes full of absolute despair and pure ruin. The loss of his supreme skill destroyed his entire arrogant mindset. I placed my heavy armored boot directly on his expensive silk chest. The physical pressure pinned him to the cracked stone pavement fast. I needed him to deliver a specific message to the corrupt council. I leaned down and spoke with a cold, mechanical tone of authority. His weak body trembled violently under the weight of my cold words. The fear of an unranked anomaly would soon infect the royal capital. I ordered him to return to the wealthy inner city before the dawn. He nodded quickly and scrambled away into the dark, empty street. He would tell them that their sacred monopoly on power was now dead. I turned back to my elite guards, standing in perfect, firm formation. Their plasma shields illuminated the dark night with bright energy. We had successfully crushed the largest execution force in history. The cold morning wind swept across the silent, ruined battlefield. I stood alone among the broken weapons of the Royal Guard. This massive victory marked the true beginning of my new era. System Alert Mass Extraction Protocol is now fully active. Thousands of blue light streams floated from the tied captives. They watched in horror as their birthrights left their cores. The natural talent they worshipped meant absolutely nothing here. I absorbed every single minor defensive aura and speed boost. My internal database expanded with endless raw combat data. The sheer volume of energy forced my physical body to adapt. System Alert core capacity upgraded to handle new fragments. I opened the Empire management interface in my active mind. The holographic map of my slum district glowed bright gold. It was time to transform this forgotten place into a real city. I gathered the ordinary citizens in the central market square. Thousands of weak and hungry people looked up at me with hope. They never had a chance to awaken any useful magical abilities. The corrupt Imperial Registry threw them away like useless trash. I raised my hands and activated the mass distribution network, System Alert transferring structural fragments to loyal subjects. A dense wave of blue energy washed over the silent crowd. Glowing geometric runes appeared on their weak physical bodies. The raw power healed their old wounds and built new muscles. Ordinary builders received fragments of heavy kinetic strength. They could now lift massive stone blocks with absolute ease. Poor street merchants gained minor perception and speed skills. The entire population evolved into a perfectly functional unit. I watched my artificial kingdom grow stronger by the second. The Royal Council would definitely feel this massive power surge. They relied on a few elite nobles to maintain their control. I gave true power to the massive endless ocean of ordinary men. System Alert territory infrastructure requires some rapid upgrades. I selected a complex earth manipulation skill from my vast menu. I fused it with a high-tier structural reinforcement blueprint. System Alert. New skill acquired Imperial Fortress construction. I slammed my heavy armored boots into the cracked stone ground. A massive kinetic shockwave traveled through the entire district. The old wooden buildings began to shift and rebuild themselves. Thick walls of dense black stone rose from the dark, damp earth. The citizens gasped as their broken homes turned into bunkers. My new architectural magic reshaped the very fabric of reality. Glowing blue defensive runes covered every single new structure. The forgotten slum was now a heavily fortified military sector. I felt a deep sense of absolute control over my new territory. The captured royal soldiers watched this miracle in pure despair. They finally realized that their beloved empire was already dead. I ordered my elite vanguard to secure the new outer stone walls. Their white plasma shields reflected the early morning sunlight. The inner city gates remained tightly shut in absolute pure fear. The wealthy nobles were probably hiding in their golden palaces. They thought their wealth could protect them from my dark wrath. I needed to strike the registry tower before they recovered. That tall white building held the data of every single citizen. Destroying it would completely erase their fake social hierarchy. I summoned my disgraced healer to the central command structure. He walked into the dark room with a look of absolute sheer awe. His medical abilities had grown fast under my direct command. I handed him a detailed map of the inner royal capital streets. We needed to infiltrate the wealthy district without being seen. System alert. Activating the stealth camouflage fusion protocol. I merged a shadow manipulation skill with a light-bending aura. The two complex golden blueprints twisted into a perfect sphere. System alert. New skill acquired. Absolute void concealment. I distributed this new stealth fragment to my best elite scouts. Their physical bodies faded fast into the ambient background. They became invisible ghosts ready to haunt the rich inner city. I instructed them to locate the main energy lines of the tower. The Royal Council powered their barriers with raw blue crystals. If we severed the main supply lines, their defenses would crumble. The scouts nodded silently and vanished into the bright daylight. I walked back out to the main balcony of my new stone fortress. The artificial city buzzed with endless, pure, productive energy. My people were forging new weapons and training their new skills. The system fed me minor updates on their rapid daily progress. Every sword swing generated more raw data for my central core. I was becoming a walking god of pure absolute combat mechanics. Suddenly, a massive red flare exploded high in the distant sky. The Royal Army was trying to signal their hidden reserve forces. They planned to surround my territory with heavy artillery units. I smiled coldly at their pathetic attempt at military strategy. System alert. Detecting massive hostile energy signatures nearby. I activated my spatial lock and prepared for the next slaughter. My artificial empire would consume every piece of this world. The true revolution of power was finally ready to begin now. The ground trembled under the weight of approaching machines. They brought heavy siege engines powered by magic crystals. I analyzed their crude machines from a very safe distance. Their weapons relied on basic elemental magic to deal damage. I could dismantle their entire arsenal with one single thought. System alert. Calibrating the spatial lock for a wide range. The air pressure dropped as I gathered my raw kinetic energy. The final battle for absolute control of the capital was here.
This video and everything in it are completely fictional and original creations by the author. The story is made only for storytelling and entertainment inside a fictional universe. It isn't meant to encourage violence, dangerous actions, or harmful behavior, and nothing in this video should be copied in real life. All characters shown in this work are fictional and are presented as 18 years old or older. This content is made only for entertainment and isn't intended to offend, attack, or harm any person, group, or organization. This channel is more than just entertainment. It's made to share deep ideas, powerful meanings, and valuable insights through stories that make you think and feel in a new way.